intentional instead of reactive, and grounded instead of emotional. But even that concept becomes clearer when you look at real human transformation, because people rarely change in comfort. They change in tension, and that tension forces decisions that comfort would never demand. And those decisions, once repeated, become identity, and identity becomes the filter through which everything else is interpreted. And once identity begins to shift, perception follows, and once perception shifts, even the same world looks different. Not because the world changed first, but because the observer did. And that change is often so gradual that it is only recognized in hindsight when comparison becomes possible between who someone was and who they have become. But there is something even more subtle happening underneath all of this. Because as stability increases, fear decreases. Not because uncertainty disappears, but because confidence in structure replaces dependence on emotion, and that replacement changes how pressure is experienced entirely. And that is where many people reach a turning point without realizing it, because what once felt like chaos begins to feel like information, and what once felt like threat begins to feel like feedback, and that transformation is not external, it is interpretive. But interpretation alone is not the final stage, because even interpretation must be anchored somewhere, and that anchor is what determines whether a person remains stable, long-term, or slips back into old patterns when pressure returns. Because without anchoring, even progress becomes temporary. And so the final layer is not complexity, but simplicity, returning again and again to what stabilizes you, even when it feels repetitive, even when it feels small, even when it feels like it shouldn't be enough. Because what feels small in calm moments becomes what holds everything together in unstable ones. And that is where everything we've been circling finally converges, not in fear, not in extremes, not in speculation, but in a very grounded realization. Most of what feels like loss of control is actually a signal that structure is needed,